Hello everyone and welcome back to another ant keeping video. Anting season is now upon us, with the weather starting to warm up, bringing an opportunity for ants to start rapid growth once again. Through most of the winter, my ants were not very active despite their constant eating, and I think they have an internal clock to tell when to take a break from growing. My desert ants are starting to take off once again, and updates are needed for ants that have not been featured on the channel for a long time. And one of those is my original Formicultute mexicanus colony, who I haven't shown in almost a year. The reason I haven't featured these in a while is valid, they just haven't grown. The queen just wasn't really able to keep up with the deaths of the colony, and wasn't really productive at all for a year or so, which is why the colony is so small, despite its age of around 3 years. But now, finally, there seems to be some good growth and a good amount of brood. They still have plenty of room in their Tar Heel Ants fortress, but have definitely expanded into some brand new chambers. I can see some cocoons now, a good sign, since the colony went through a period of producing naked pupae for no apparent reason. This is a bit odd since this species usually wraps their pupae in a cocoon. There is also a large and healthy pile of larvae on the water tower, with the cocoons spread around the nest, occupying drier areas than the larvae. A popular hangout spot for the workers seems to be the top left chamber of the nest, where a lot of them are seen hanging out from the top, perhaps sleeping. While most of the brood is stationed in the bottom and largest chamber, there is a small stockpile of cocoons above it, with some workers sitting on or near the pile to keep it safe. There's always a few workers walking up and down the center of the nest, traveling to the various chambers. Before, only a couple chambers had any workers in them, but now, every chamber has at least a few. Something that worries me a little bit is their decreased feeding response to protein. They always come right out to the sugars I provide them, but I hardly ever see them express much interest in mealworms. My other colony of the same species goes crazy for mealworms, so maybe it's just a colony preference thing. They must eventually eat the protein, as the larvae which eat it seems healthy. My second Formicultute mexicanus colony expresses many similar traits, but has grown much faster. Since you last saw them, I've added a second mini hearth to their space. The extra outworld space has been the biggest benefit, as I've been able to feed them a bit easier without an immediate swarm. As I said before, they really like feeding time, and dropping in food always results in a sizable feeding response. Inside the second nest, they treat it as more of a hangout spot rather than a nesting area, and have unfortunately brought some trashing. They still utilize this space though, as a lot of the quote overflow workers are stationed here. I assume they will eventually expand more into the second nest, eventually adding some brood into here. I want to be careful not to expand this colony's nest too soon, since I feel that I made a mistake with the original colony by moving the species into the fortress too soon. Brood-wise, they seem to be at a similar spot compared to the original colony, although the queen seems more productive, pumping out more brood during the winter and making the colony bigger. They also have had a bit of a naked pupae problem similar to the original colony, so I have added some more substrate in hopes to help them wrap their cocoons. I don't have evidence that the naked pupae actually hurt the brood's development, but it is unusual for them to not wrap cocoons. Both colonies of this desert species have been a joy to keep, So I hope they both continue to grow and I can expand their setups when needed. Another desert species I have is a bigger colony of my Camponotus USCA02. This species is the largest in California, and you can see why. This queen is beautiful and very big. Unfortunately, their original DIY nest grew some mold at the bottom and didn't seem to be holding water, and it was leaking out. Before I noticed, they had a bit of a die-off. I have now moved them to another DIY nest, which has been working out great for them. They seem to have fully recovered from the die-off and have replenished their numbers quite well. They are well suited to this flat nest and take up a good amount of space, but still leave enough to grow into. Interestingly, while most of my colonies prefer to nest on the water tower, this one is stationed away from it, in the opposite corner. I guess they like the drier conditions. This chamber is where most of the colony is, with a few other workers below it. The queen had a bit of a break from laying, but when the spring came, she started to lay more eggs. Now they have a healthy amount of young brood ready to grow into workers. I've noticed that many of the workers have bloated gasters and seem to be keeping extra food there for safekeeping. Some ants do this. Another one is the majors in my Fedoli yaki colony, and it is especially prevalent in the repletes of the Myrmecocystis mexicanus I just showed. It is a clever way to store food just in case the colony doesn't have enough at the time. It would probably be a tough task to move this colony into a bigger nest, and I am not sure what nest I'll move them into once they grow out of this one. That's a problem that I'll deal with in the future though, as they still have a good amount of room to grow in their current nest. I love how nice it is to have a bigger colony of large ants, as they are the nicest to look at, while still being a good colony size. I also recently caught some queens of the same species, but I will be selling most if not all, as I already have a big colony of Camponotus CA02. These queens and all the others I caught in my last video will appear in the future. That should wrap up today's video. I love all of these desert species and hope they will continue to grow into impressive colonies. Thank you for watching all the way through, and peace out.